Okay, I chose to review this as a tribute to David Collings, and then I decided to review The Mind Robber, and then Hamish Wilson just died. Are my reviews cursed? Comment section. Yeah, hope your guys' quarantine is going a little bit better than most veteran actors of Doctor Who. Moving on through my biography of my upbringing as a Doctor Who fan, and as you may recall, we were jumping through the first stories purchased. Previously, we did The Mind Robber. Of course, I did The Demons. That was the very first one I ever bought, so there's no point in doing the third Doctor now. So, we're going to jump ahead to the fourth Doctor. This one actually was a much more interesting story. My sister was working in a little video store, a video CD store, where you could buy secondhand VHSs. Well, fortune had it, one of the secondhand VHSs that was there happened to be Revenge of the Cybermen. Revenge of the Cybermen was written by Jerry Davis, who co-created the Cybermen alongside Kit Pedler. And it was also a follow-up from Genesis of the Daleks. It picks up immediately afterwards. Well, considering what a masterpiece Genesis of the Daleks is, I'm not sure if this was able to carry the same torch. Revenge of the Cybermen is actually a fun story, and there was actually a lot of things in it which did carry over into later episodes as far as Cybermen's history. In fact, I would even say that the season finale, particularly Ascension of the Cybermen, made mention of the Great Cyber Wars. I'm actually left to wonder if the wars that was alluded to in this episode are what we actually got to see in this last season. So there's a lot of value to be had in this episode as far as establishing a lot of key things about the Cybermen. Of course, one of the major things that this episode set up was the fact that Cybermen's main weakness is gold. There are a lot of classic Fourth Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Harry Sullivan moments. Of course, one of my favorites,
Harry Sullivan is an imbecile!
Yes, you could call it abusing the companions, and you could call it a bit cruel, but compared to all the things that Harry Sullivan has actually been able to survive, and even some of the silly things he's put his foot in, yes, like that, is it really an insult to the character that he would look at the Doctor wearing what is obviously a bomb strapped to his back and think that the best thing to do is undo the buckle? He's an imbecile. But that's why we love him. The Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Harry make it back to Space Station Nerva after their little detour to Skaro, only to find out that they've arrived at a different point in time and discover that there's a lot of dead people. Then they realize, oh no, we're in a different point in time. It turns out this space station was originally designed to be a beacon to help steer space freighters away from any sort of asteroids that were previously not categorized, which is actually a very interesting excuse to recycle sets, because it was known that this episode was actually filmed immediately after Ark in Space was finished, and to save on the budget they obviously recycled the set. So to their credit, they did a really good job finding a really strong excuse to recycle sets. What they definitely should probably get smacked upside the head for is the very badly placed dummies that were put in place of extras. You couldn't just grab some guy by the craft services table, put him in a jumpsuit, and just lay him on the floor. You got the jumpsuits, just put them on the people. Don't raid the mannequins at Harrods and just lay them on the ground like that. It just, particularly when you watch it on DVD, it doesn't exactly work out as well as you think. So they find out that a virus is running rampant. I swear to Christ, I wanted to do this episode before all this went down. A virus is running rampant on the space station, but the Doctor has some doubts. He looks at the symptoms of the bodies and discovers that this may very well be man-made. That among the survivors on the space station, one of them may very well be a traitor. The space station is orbiting an asteroid, which the Doctor realizes is not an asteroid, but in fact a planet. And not just any planet, but the planet Voga, also known as the Planet of Gold. But even weirder is the fact that there are cybermats running around the space station. The Doctor makes the connection that the cybermats are being controlled by the traitor, but that would mean the traitor is in cahoots with the Cybermen. Could it be that he's helping the Cybermen destroy Voga? Because, as we discover, gold is absolutely lethal to Cybermen. So, is that part of the story? Maybe, maybe not. On Voga, there's a power struggle going on between the Elder and the head of the guards. You see, the Vogans actually live something of a subterranean existence, mainly out of the fear from all of what they suffered at the hands of the Cybermen a long time ago. But Voris, head of the guard, played by the late great David Collings, well, he is kind of sick of subterranean life and is going to set in motion a bid to try and eliminate the Cybermen completely, and they decide to use the human trader on the space station in order to do it. But he's kind of an egocentric demigod and may have bit off more than he can chew. I'm going to leave it there. No more spoilers beyond this point. Let's talk about the good of the episode. Firstly, I will say this, the core trio, Dr. Harry, Sarah. One of the things I will say, this was my first exposure to Harry Sullivan as a companion. One thing I really liked was his camaraderie with Sarah Jane, particularly when they're being held captive by the Vogans. I almost said Vogons. Drastically different there. And I will say that a lot of the stuff with the Doctor was actually quite quotable. And for this being the first video of the Tom Baker era that I bought, and the one that I obviously watched a lot while I waited for my collection to grow, this was a good one to keep watching, particularly because it does showcase Tom Baker in his element. And the story is actually very well paced, and there's a lot of intrigue that carries you all the way through, particularly with characters like the traitor Kelman. He's definitely a smarmy, smug little asshole, and you definitely want to smack him, even occasionally punch him, just on principle, because he's, such a dick. The Vogans themselves actually do have an interesting story. They actually have a very strong history that they do a good job establishing, and you definitely get to see both sides of the point of view. It does suck living a subterranean life, but simultaneously, this is a life they chose because they knew it was the safest way to go. I suppose Voga, in a way, is a lot like Wakanda, in the sense that they are a very high-functioning society. They have a lot of material wealth at their disposal, but they also know that reaching out may open them up to some bad exploitation on account of whoever happens to be passing by, whether it be the Cybermen who want to destroy everything or just humans who want to exploit their material wealth. They actually make some compelling arguments on both sides, and that is a surprising bit of political intrigue that the episode actually has. And a wacky little Easter egg, especially for new series fans who watch this episode, they're going to notice the Seal of Rassilon there, and people are going to wonder what the hell that's about. You see, the Seal of Rassilon was actually recycled for when they did the Deadly Assassin. They picked it just because it looked really cool, and so they decided to just replicate it for that episode. That's why it's there. It was originated for this episode. They were just being lazy and they said, ooh, that's a really cool looking symbol. Boom! Seal of Rassilon. That's what happened. But if there's anything I'm gonna say that is the major weak link of this episode, and I gotta say, shame on you, Jerry Davis, for this, the Cybermen in this story are easily the weakest that I've ever seen them in the entire history of Doctor Who. Cybermen, a race that have touted themselves to have removed any semblance of human emotion or human desire or human fear or anything that defines humanity. It's strange that the Cybermen would want to engage in something extremely human as a vendetta. And this is the Cybermen's modus operandi. This is what they want to do. They want to get revenge on Voga because Voga was instrumental in the Cybermen's downfall, because they supplied the gold, which ended up aiding the war effort to destroy the Cybermen. And the Cybermen are kind of sore about that. It just seems strange that the Cybermen would be willing to risk their prolonged existence to engage in a vendetta which could very well lead to their ultimate destruction. It's just a bit odd when you take into account that the one thing the Cybermen have always endeavored to do is to build their number to survive. The Cybermen are all about absorbing everyone into the collective, to be a uniform race. And it's just strange that they would say, yes, come to us, my children. Oh, except you f***ers, I'm gonna kill you. All of that could be forgivable if their presentation worked as well as it needed to, but unfortunately it kind of doesn't. The suits, for the most part, look like they were pretty much recycled from the Pat Troughton era, and one of the major things that you do need to do is kind of evolve the look, and they don't really do that particularly well. The only thing they evolved was the idea that they have blasters out of their heads, which I suppose would do wonders for their aim. I mean, you just look to where you look and, oh, there's a target, bam. I suppose that works. And when you take into account how much things have actually improved from their last appearance in The Invasion to this, unfortunately, they did not really do much to improve the Cybermen's looks, And even to an extent, the voices are a significant downgrade from the Pat Troughton era. I mean, one of the things I loved about Tomb of the Cybermen was the voice that they did for the Cybermen. Hell, even in their first appearance in the 10th Planet, the voices that they did for the Cybermen in that one were actually really eerie, especially when you see the cloth-covered cyber faces just do this.
Care? No, why should I care?
I suppose because you can still see that semblance of humanity, but the problem with the ones in this story is that they just come off as an actor inside the suit. And unfortunately, Christopher Robbie, who in my previous review played the Carcass in The Mind Robber, plays a cyber leader in this one, and unfortunately his voice for it is extremely pantomime. It's very camp.
The beacon is ours.
And we're supposed to be taking these guys really seriously. On set, when they're on the beacon, it doesn't look right. I mean, I will say they fare just a little bit better when they're on location in the caves and with the lighting and all that. That definitely is an improvement, but not by far. And that's really a shame. The thing to bear in mind, this is the first time the public has seen the Cybermen since the invasion, and that is kind of a letdown because for a lot of people, they are beloved monsters. And this episode just does not do much as far as reminding people why they were such imposing enemies to begin with. And really, they weren't seen again until Earthshock. And you get the feeling that a lot of people, when they saw this episode, maybe second guess whether or not they really like the Cybermen and whether or not they want to see them again. And that might have put off the producers for the long time afterwards from ever bringing them back. And so that is a legit shame that the one crucial thing that needed to work for this episode to actually have something, and unfortunately it doesn't work. I suppose this being the first Tom Baker episode I bought, and really the first Cybermen episode I bought, I guess it did kind of set me up for being impressed with a lot of the stories before this one and after this one, because the presentation in those were way better. I guess that's a plus, but nowadays with how amazing the Cybermen have been in the new series, I think a lot of people who are going to go back and watch this episode, they're going to be like going, how did you guys ever take off? It was a fun episode for me when I was starting off as a Doctor Who fan, but I guess as time has gone on, it really hasn't aged as well as it should have. So I guess Revenge of the Cybermen is a watchable story, but if you were to ask me if it was my favorite Cybermen story, I will pretty much tell you no. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that this is the worst episode the Cybermen have ever had? Or do you think that this is something of an underrated gem? Leave it all in the comments below, and for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click, and thou shalt be served.